Welcome, everyone, to the Centurion Show. We are so glad you are joining us on this incredible journey. We pray that the conversations you hear, both today and in the days to come, will uplift your spirits, challenge your perspectives, and inspire you to live a life wholeheartedly. Now, we know that this world is full of noise and confusion, and our hope is that this show points you back to truth and encourages you to seek the Lord for discernment, wisdom, and courage. Now, on behalf of me and my brothers, we are so excited to walk this road with you together, full of faith, strength, and purpose. Now, starting off strong today, our guest is not just a soldier, but a torchbearer of truth. Lieutenant Mark Bashaw is a former officer in the U.S. Army who became widely known for blowing the whistle on many unlawful practices inside the Department of Defense. With a background in preventative medicine and public health, Lieutenant Bashaw courageously took a stand against forced medical experimentation on service members, becoming a voice for those silenced under pressure. Now, what makes his story extraordinary isn't just what he revealed, but it was how he revealed it. With calm conviction, spiritual clarity, and a willingness to lose everything in order to keep his soul intact. Mark joins us today not only to share what happened, but to remind us that we are each called to live as watchmen, guardians of the truth, and defenders of righteousness. Lieutenant Mark Bashaw, it's great to have you on the Centurion Show. Welcome, and we're all very honored that you're able to make it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here. This is quite the setup y'all have here. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, this all unfolded in the last week or so, and so it's pretty, like I said, budget friendly, but
it's pretty solid to me. This is pro level status.
Well, once we get up to a couple million followers, then we may extend it or whatever, but this will do for the time being.
Good stuff.
So let's just jump right in. I know a lot's been going on in your area, in your life, the last days and weeks, really. And so let's walk us through kind of what's been going on.
Yeah. So I recently received a full presidential pardon from Donald J. Trump for conviction in a kangaroo court. I was convicted. I was an Army medical officer. I served 17 years active duty in the military. I started out enlisted when I was 19 years old, joined directly right out of high school. And then in 2019, September, I got commissioned in the Medical Service Corps. And then I went to be a Prev Med officer, medical entomologist at Army Public Health Center. The whole pandemic kicked off, as you guys are well aware, the masking, the testing, the injections later to follow. I saw the data in the databases. I saw the weaponized risk communication strategies. I saw all that information. It just wasn't, there was no scientific basis for it. It was complete, utter pseudoscience and garbage, as we all are aware. And so I started communicating up my chain of command the fact that you can't force service members, and generally speaking, the general public as well, to participate with emergency use authorized medical products, whether it's a mask, whether it's a test, or these injections. They sent me to a court-martial, banned me from all Army Public Health Center facilities after I started communicating and refusing to participate with these experimental products. So they sent me a court-martial, threatened me with life worth imprisonment. Like I said, they banned me from all Army Public Health Center facilities for 413 days. And then on my 17th and a half year of military service, they unlawfully discharged me from the military. And so for the last 2 years, I've been, pretty outspoken about the whole situation. And then May 28th, like I said, the President of the United States gave me a full unconditional presidential pardon for the conviction. So that's huge news. So that's kind of the latest in my world.
Yeah. Well, what made you want to get into the military in the first place? I know you said you got in right out of high school, but what made you want to join?
My grandfather served in the Navy, World War II. I had some other family members. My uncle, he was a Marine. I had my brother Joey, he was Army intelligence officer, and I really respected and had an affinity for service members and the military. And so I kind of knew in my junior year of high school, there wasn't really much going on. I grew up in Massachusetts. There really wasn't much for me there. I wasn't a great, student in high school. So college wasn't really an option for me at that point in time. And so I decided to enlist in the Air Force, and I really wanted to, one, serve my country, our country, and then also travel the world and get involved and just have that experience of military. And so that was a big reason why I ended up serving right out of high school. So.
Was there a specific moment during your military service when you felt a deep spiritual dissonance that goes against God's order? And when was that moment?
Oh, I would say it was probably in March of 2020 when the whole uh, COVID-19 debacle kind of started taking place. When I saw the people of our country having to shut down their businesses
Mm.
and a huge disruption on their liberties, on their God-given unalienable rights, like that to me, that did not sit right with me. I was like, I didn't want to. My brothers and sisters who served overseas and gave their lives and sacrificed for our nation didn't do that. So our countrymen and women had to shut down their businesses and mask their children and force them into these experimental products or coerce them into it or weaponize this whole, public health, safety apparatus against them. So that's when it really, March of 2020 is when I was like, yeah, there's something seriously wrong here, and it's going completely against obviously God's laws. And the beautiful thing about our country, it's based upon, biblical scriptures, biblical values, and God's laws. Um, and so that's to answer your question. Yeah, it was March 2020. Very distinctly remember just like shaking my head like this is insane.
Well, kind of tagging on a little bit to what Brody was asking, I know that uh, in the military you have to take dozens and dozens of vaccines and shots and everything. And so, what was so different to you about this shot? Why was this shot so much different than the dozens of other ones that you've taken over the years?
Yeah, that's we get that question all the time. Like he's taken every other shot. Like he's done everything else. It's like, yeah, but at this point in time now the cat's out the bag. Because now, because of what they did with COVID-19, and this came out of the anthrax debacle. And we have to remember, like, history, there's a history here with experimentation on service members. And so back in the anthrax debacle, they were coercing same script basically, except it's, mid 1990s, late 1990s. They come out with a anthrax shot for, anthrax and and coerce the entire military into participating with an emergency use authorized product. Out of that, out of that absolute insanity came legislation, act of Congress that said you cannot coerce force service members to participate with an experimental emergency use authorized product. There has to be an FDA approval. You must give them informed consent. You must give them the option to accept or refuse, right? And just generally speaking, even if it is FDA approved, you still have to give them informed consent. And so when this whole thing came down, and they were demonizing President Trump for participating with the what was it, the therapeutics like hydroxychloroquine, right? Which had, to my understanding at that time, had emergency use authorization. And you can't bring forth, they couldn't bring forth an injection, a quote unquote vaccine, if hydroxychloroquine was approved. So what we see the mainstream media do, we saw them go full tilt, demonize Trump for taking hydroxychloroquine. FDA removed its EUA status, and then we see the bringing forth a vaccine that's going to solve this quote unquote pandemic, right? And so the laws were clear, and we didn't have an FDA approved product. So it was like, no, like you got to give service members the option to accept or refuse. And the fact was, they just, they didn't do that. And that not even just for the quote unquote vaccines, but the masking, the testing as well. Those are all emergency use authorized products. And then on top of that, where was the actual scientific basis? Where was the scientific justification for them? Because within the first month, we knew it all didn't work, right? 2 weeks to slow the spread, right? But I go back to the testing. A lot of people are focused on the jabs, which rightfully so, because they're doing immense amount of damage. Like there's a lot of unknowns there when you put a chemical serum inside your body, and then possible adverse reactions and all sorts of things like that, right? But I go back to the testing, because the testing is the creation of these case rates, of this crazy pandemonium that we saw in the mainstream media. I don't know if you guys remember when they put the case rates and the death rates at the bottom of the screen.
Oh, yeah.
Forced it psychologically down everybody's throats. But where'd they get that case rate from? A PCR test. PCR test was never meant to diagnose these quote unquote viruses and disease. Yet that's what they've done, and that's what they're continuing to do. So I say all that to say, yes, I've participated with the other ones at some point in time due to my ignorance, really. And it came a point in my life where it was more faith-based, where I'm like, no, like, why can't I lean on my faith in Jesus Christ, right? My faith in Jesus Christ to serve my country without being inoculated with some sort of chemical serum. And this was just over the top, just blatantly wrong. And so now it's just like, no, like, you need to give them the option. If somebody wants to serve the country and they don't want to get, boosted up with all sorts of jobs, like, why can't we let them serve the country? Isn't this an all volunteer force? Or is it not an all volunteer force, and you're forcing service members into these products? And if they don't take these products, then they can't serve their country? I mean, it's just kind of crazy.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure also that what you were saying spiritually, after you got discharged and court-martialed, I'm sure that was a pretty big test on your faith as well, because I'm sure there's a lot of stuff, repercussions that happened because of that.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing with my faith was in 2018 when I finally submitted my life to Jesus Christ. Due to trudging around in the darkness for so long, dazed and confused, I'll call it, where I finally submitted my life, and I just simply asked for God-given discernment. Show me what you need me to hear. Show me what you need me to see. I'll do whatever it is, And so from that point forward, I was seeing things. And so going back to this whole debacle, in the military, and this whole thing, because it wasn't just the military, you guys experienced it too. Schools and just being, in public in general. It actually made my faith grow. It actually, because it was so crazy, and it was isolating at times, because I didn't have necessarily, at certain points, I didn't have individuals in my location that kind of saw things the way I was seeing things. But I always had God, and I always leaned on that. And so it was incredibly challenging, but at the same time, it was like, all right, God, and just consciously giving it over to Him and His will for my life, and whatever that is, and trying to do my imperfectly best to execute my duties as a military officer and a medical officer, and just act morally, ethically, and lawfully. And so it was all at the core spiritually based, spiritual warfare, and then from there, all the other stuff. So,
why do you believe they push these vaccines so hard, quote unquote vaccines?
I believe that we were dealing with a foreign belligerent occupation of our country. I believe that we had acts of war occur on our nation. I believe that the national security infrastructure, such as the election system, which was national security infrastructure, was attacked by foreign entities based on affidavits from we the people, showing that there was foreign interference in a national security infrastructure. Well, whenever a national security infrastructure is attacked by an enemy, that's an act of war. And then what did we see? We saw a installation of a new administration, right? The quote unquote Biden in January 2021. And then what did we see in the military? Immediately we saw this diversity and equity, inclusion, communist, Marxist ideology starting to be infiltrated in there, the trainings, mandatory trainings. And then we saw the weaponization of the order. So I believe it was all to, I believe it was an attack on our nation. I bottom like at the end of the day, I just believe it was an attack on the nation. I don't, to destabilize our country. I know that's I go pretty deep with these answers.
No, that's what we want.
I feel like context matters, and
Absolutely.
I would say to anybody out there listening, I would say, do your own research on this. Don't listen to me. Don't, challenge what I've said and question the things that you're being presented with, and try to poke holes in it and investigate it for yourself. Because I think, the days are over where you stare at the box on the wall, right? And it tells you what's going on in this world, right? Because look at what happened in the last 5 years. If that's the case, we all would have been participating with these experiments.
Yeah.
Which many people have, but there's some people that are coming awake at this point in time and realizing, like, hey, something's wrong. Epstein Island, what?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like...
I mean, after you saw that recently.
Yeah. Absolutely. We are in the age where it's no longer really survival of the fittest. It's really like survival of the wisest. We need to be really wise and discerning about what's going on around us, and that comes from the being in tune with, I believe, the Spirit, and being plugged in with the Word, the Bible. And when you're connected to God and the Spirit, then He will give you, like what He gave you, that discernment to say, no, this is not right. This is not lawful, and I'm not going to comply with this. It may cost me my job, my career, my livelihood, but it's my soul and my faith is worth more than anything material on this earth.
Yeah, you nailed it on the head. It's information warfare. I mean, at the end of the day,
Absolutely.
like I said, it's, you guys know, it's spiritual warfare. And then, it's psychological warfare, and then it's information warfare. And we are in the information age. I mean, look at you guys, like young generation here, starting up a podcast, right? And providing information and alternative information that maybe some of the younger generation has never been exposed to. Because let's face it, did you hear about any of this in school? Did you hear about it? Did they teach you about the monetary system, right? Did they teach you about...
Muy poquito.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and so, it is information warfare. And yes, my personal experience is navigating that is absolutely getting on my knees and tapping into God-given discernment and in the Word and reading the Word. And it's been quite the experience. I mean, like, wow. Like,
I imagine.
You see all sorts of, I mean, you guys know, like, you see all sorts of stuff when you start doing that.
Oh, and it's the devil. Really, it's this demonic, like you said, spiritual warfare. Where the devil and the demons are all present. We are seeing that, like on a scale like in never before seen since Noah's age. And so it's really crazy to see this all unfolding right now. And again, a lot of people don't really realize what's going on, and so that's why it's that much more important. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be black and white. You're either in tune with God, or you're not. You either believe in Him and you either believe in all that, or you're not, and that will cost you both in this life and in the life to come if you're not in tune with Him.
Yeah, amen to that. It's I mean, you're seeing people where it's almost like there's two different timelines of individuals or two different consciousness levels. You've got one that's tapping into discernment, questioning things and being inquisitive, and then one that's just blindly going along and trudging along. And it's like, it's almost like it's expediting their exit from this world. And it's, I mean, it is, it can be scary, but, when I put my faith in God, it's just like, hey, give it over and, tap into His will for my life and not trying to be a puppet master of my own. And it's a lot, in my opinion, it's a lot easier that way too.
Amen. Amen.
All right, so how has your walk with God changed as you stepped into the role as a whistleblower?
It really didn't, if I'm being honest. If anything, it grew out of the persecution of going through that process of just trying to, communicate with my chain of command, do the right thing, and just being like, they're really gonna send me to a court martial? Like, is this really happening? Like, kind of like pinching myself on a daily basis. Like, is this real right now? Like, because in the military, we've been trained. Like, you're trained to use your chain of command. Like, you're ingrained in the processes and the regulations from the very start, right? Boot camp. And so I was just baffled, and so was a lot of other service members, just baffled at how it, it how just blind people were. But at the same time, even when you presented them with legitimate information, like legitimately printed on the paper, spelled out for them, they were just like just put their fingers in their ears. And I was like, what is going on right now? And I would have, those conversations with God, like, all right, God, like, this is what's going on. And just, wow, like, you're amazing. Just constantly praising God and glorifying God, and the fact that, like, I was able to see that and witness that and experience that and be like, and not question my faith, because I mean, it was just, I go back to what we were talking about, God-given discernment. When you're discerning and you have that God-given discernment, it's like you just know. It's like, this is messed up. And so, it hasn't changed other than the fact that it's gotten stronger. And it continued to grow, and I was just continuing to see things that were just like incredible. And I was like, whoa. And then at the same time, just meet other incredible God-fearing individuals in the process, right? Like yourselves, right? Your families, and my friends and our friends, our other military service members that were seeing it too, and kind of connecting and sharing, whether it's faith-based notes, right, per se, or actual notes from the military side of the house and some evidence and things like that. So, yeah, it's definitely grown immensely.
Absolutely. Would you say your discernment for seeing these kind of things like really grew, and were you able to, using the discernment that you learned from the COVID jab, kind of point other things out to you that you started to second guess?
Yes, I think the first thing I started questioning and kind of led me to the point with the whole pandemic was the monetary system. So I finished my, like, a master's degree in formal education back in 2018. And so I had a lot of time on my hands too. And at that point in time, my faith was growing as well. And I started researching the monetary system, the central banking, debt-based monetary system. And when I did that, I was like, whoa, like, this is a complete and utter farce. Like, this isn't even United States dollars. It's Federal Reserve notes and X, Y, and Z. And you can go down that rabbit hole. And I encourage people to, like, if you want to know what's going on, I would say start with the monetary system, start questioning that. In God will you trust, right? In God we trust? No, that's that's not my God, right?
Yeah.
Small G.
Lower G, right? And I started with that, and that's what kind of led me to the path to other stuff, because at the end of the day, it seems to all be connected into that diabolical, you know, you could call it a slave system, debt slave system, right? Um, and 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 so I started with that, and that's kind of where I ended up. Whereas not necessarily question the jabs and then start questioning other stuff. I was already going down, deep rabbit holes and trying to research and learn as much as I could. Because, again, like, when have they ever told you, hey, the monetary system's a federal bank, privatized, quote unquote, central bank, like, in school? Whenever they ever told you about that? Like,
No.
they don't even teach you practical stuff like how to balance a checkbook. Like, what's a checkbook? Like,
Right.
so I was just baffled with that whole, and then I went down cryptocurrency kind of rabbit holes and like, whoa, like, all right, those are interesting. And then I showed up and kind of kept on going with the medical side of the house too, because I was just really curious on like cancer, for example. Like, there's so much money being pumped into the cures for cancer, but I'm like, who's like, the cures for cancer don't even lie within the mainstream medical system. Cures for cancer seem to be outside of that system, where you're treating yourself in a holistic way and looking at it very differently from then the mainstream, which is chemotherapy. And it almost seems like there's these boxes they're checking, and it makes a credible amount of money treating that. Whereas I would argue that the cures and the treatments are way cheaper
Decent.
and effective
Yep.
Yeah,
That's
decent.
it. Yeah.
and safe.
It comes down to
Right.
centralized versus decentralized, really.
Yeah.
That's
It's kind of like like what you all doing here with the podcast. It's like, I don't think people are, if they are, I'll pray for them. But I
Yeah.
think a lot of the younger generation too is going elsewhere for their information.
Right.
And so having a podcast like this on kind of a decentralized platform is solid,
yeah.
That's right.
Well, going off of that centralized versus decentralized side topic, what do you see in the next 5, 10, 20 years for the monetary system? Because now we know it's centralized for now, the US dollar. We still have that for the time being, but what do you see as far as that crashing or some sort of crypto coming into play, or how do you think that's going to all unfold for the next generation, us, the next few generations?
I think there's going to be a transition. I don't think there's going to be a cold hard crash. I think there could be, uh, like rumors of wars and wars and rumors of wars, right? Type of a psychological aspect to it, where the sky is falling. They're selling us the sky is falling, but truly, I think it'll be more of a transition if you're paying attention, doing your research. I think it'll have to, in my opinion, it'll have to go to like a United States Treasury note backed by gold, right? With a medium of exchange, like a more efficient medium of exchange. Like, because right now we're dealing with this, 2 to 3 day settlement periods. You've got to get permission from your bank when you want to spend more than $10,000, or maybe even less at this point. They want to ask you what you're doing. Whereas now you can use these different tools like digital assets in a decentralized manner to make your transactions and have that medium of exchange between people without it being too intrusive. Because let's face it, I mean, most people are spending what's called a central bank digital banker's note, right? It's all digital at this point. I mean, majority of people don't have cold hard cash sitting under their bed ready to spend. It's all digital anyway. And it's worse than that because it's controlled by the centralized entity that we talked about, the Federal Reserve, which, inflates your money at will when they decide to print like $2 trillion, right? So I foresee it's going to have to transition to something else. I don't know what that looks like. I would hope it's like some sort of sound monetary policy, like, backed by sound assets, physical, gold or stuff like that, with a medium of exchange that allows for those transfers to happen at a cheaper, scalable, faster, more efficient pace than the SWIFT system, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of a long answer to.
No, that's good. Well, what would you really like recommend for the younger generation that's up and coming? Because people our age are starting to get jobs and starting to make some money for themselves, and so instead of just putting that in a bank, which is worthless and it doesn't grow, would you recommend getting like hard assets like gold and silver, or would you invest in stock market or other cryptocurrencies? What
Uh,
would you
the
recommend?
biggest thing I would recommend, and again, and this isn't even financial advice, and I would never give financial advice, but the biggest thing I would recommend anybody to do is logic versus emotion. Right? When you're tapped into rationale and logic versus emotion, then you're not having these emotional, like, oh, I got to buy Bitcoin because it's going up to $110,000, right? Like, that's an emotional thing. I would say maybe you should, logically and rationally, you should probably do some research about it first and then see where it fits into your life. And then at the end of the day, obviously, don't put all your eggs in one basket. If that's something you wanted to get into, I would say research the other ones too, like XRP, and research how you can get some physical gold and physical silver to hedge yourself, and then some other tools that are out there as well. So obviously diversify, but at the end of the day, be rational and logical about it and not emotional, because when you do act emotional with your money, you're going to get burned and you're going to lose. And so, and at the end of the day, it's only supposed to be a medium of exchange anyway. It's not like, why is it so idolized? That's that right now, it's like the tip of the pyramid. It's a pyramid scheme, and it's
Absolutely.
at the top of the pyramid, and it's completely idolized. When, like, I like your chair.
Yeah.
Like, I would like to buy your chair. And the medium of exchange is the denomination in which we use to make that happen, to where you get the value you want for the chair on your side. It's like,
Right.
it's basic stuff, but that's not what they teach. They teach idolization of money and, all this stuff. And I'm like, it's just a tool at the end of the day. And so that's what I would say, logic versus emotion. Logic always wins.
I think that applies to your whole life, not just
Everything.
money. That applies to everything.
Information,
Yep,
right?
exactly.
If they're trying to feed you something and get you genned up on emotion, maybe step back and be like, what's really going on here? Because maybe they're actually preying on your emotions to get you to move where they want you to move, whoever that is.
We've seen a lot of that,
Yeah,
especially the last few years and decades.
And a lot of it's on like Instagram too, with those reels. Like, they feed on your emotions. And then, they set an algorithm towards what your preferences are, and get you to move in a certain direction. So I think the biggest thing is, just being aware of it, and then, logically and rationally thinking. And I think that always goes back to God-given discernment, and just give it over, you know?
And yeah, to kind of finish off my question, what part of your personal alignment, spirit, soul, or body was affected the most during these learning periods for you and throughout court martialing and everything you've been through?
I mean, it was spirit, soul, and body. I mean, spirit for sure. It was really disheartening to see. It was really disheartening to see other, I would say, people wearing the same uniform as me with the same American patch, that were going out of their way to come at me for something that was completely unlawful, illegal, immoral, unethical. That to me, that spiritually, but again, it was just like, all right, God, like, I knew what I had to do, and I knew the way I was trained, and morally, ethically, spiritually, all that. And I wasn't willing to give that up. I wasn't willing to uh, participate with this madness, with this insanity. So, but it was disheartening because like, when you know something, you want to tell somebody and share it and be like, hey, like, this is really crazy. And you would think that they would see it and then be like, oh, wow, like, yeah, that is pretty crazy. Or at the very least, like, take your information, be like, hey, yeah, let me look into that.
Yeah.
There was none of that. It was like this blind obedience to a completely demonic agenda. And I, the only individuals it seemed who were navigating properly, lawfully, morally, ethically, were those who had some sort of spiritual higher power in their lives. For me, it's God and Jesus Christ. Somebody else, hey, they're entitled to whatever that is. But for me, that's what it was. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing the younger generation can really learn from your story is that you need to stand up for your beliefs, and you cannot be fearful of what's going to come from that and what's going to attack you. You just kind of have to know that, if your beliefs line up with what the Lord says, the Lord will protect you. You may have hardships or go through stuff, but it's really important to know that you have to stay strong and you have to persevere through all of these trials.
Amen.
Proverbs 3:5.
Absolutely. Yeah, well said. I mean, you're absolutely right. He's not going to give you more than you can't handle. And you just got to trust in that and trust in him. And when you do that, I was in my own situation. I can't speak for anybody else, but my own situation, I was able to see some amazing things. Like I remember when I was getting court-martialed and I was sitting there and I was just kind of like staring off into space. And I was just like, I was just having conversations with God, like, wow, God, like, is this really happening? And everything's going on around me. There's witnesses on the stand and they're saying whatever they're saying. And I'm just like smiling over here. And I'm just like, wow, this is incredible. Like, this is so insane. But it was so incredible that I was able to see the insanity. And the only way I was able to see the insanity was because he was showing me what I was able to see. And so, yeah, I mean, God's not going to give you more than you can't handle. And it's just having that trust and that faith and just one step at a time, one foot in front of the other, and just roll out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we will truly start to see change in the younger generation once people start to stand up for what they believe. And that's what we're really trying to do here is that no matter your age, you can stand up for what you believe. Like the Lord gave you a voice, so
Amen.
you need to use it.
That's right.
I think
Amen.
that is just what you're saying, Blaine. That's a big problem in our society today, and it's intentional. That they are intentionally making people ignorant and dumb so that they can't think, and if they can't think, they won't stand up for their beliefs, and they'll be pushed around really easily, and so that again makes them more controllable and more malleable to whatever nefarious acts that government or deep state, whatever you want to call it, whatever they want to do. And whenever you don't have a hardened mind, by staying in tune with the Spirit, then that's unfortunately the result. And we are seeing a lot of that nowadays. And so that's very true.
And the most important thing, I mean, you're absolutely right, spot on. It's the individual tapping into their unalienable individual God-given power, right? Because the beautiful thing about our country is we live in a constitutional republic. It's a republic if you can keep it.
Sure.
Remember Benjamin Franklin said it's a republic if you can keep it,
right.
right? And so what's that mean? It means you have to do the work internally and then externally to secure your unalienable individual God-given liberties, right? And when you do that, collectively, we work together to secure the republic. It's just a natural thing that happens. Like the other service members, I was talking to a buddy of mine. He's Major Mike Gary from Maine Army Guard. He was a chemical, biological, radiological CBRN officer and got kicked out for doing his job, right? Trying to warn people about these bio jabs, whatever you want to call them. And I was like, Mike, if we didn't talk for 4 months and then we came back and talked 4 months later, we'd be on the same page.
Mm.
Why? Because we're doing individually what we're supposed to be doing to secure our unalienable individual God-given liberties. And when you're doing that, naturally, you're just collectively working together, even though you might not be side by side working together. And we've seen that from the many public servants of our republic the past 5 years. You could talk to any of them. I talked to a school teacher. He was doing it in his school, right? He was securing his liberties, his religious liberties, to not participate with these products. So that's huge.
So what was your come to Jesus moment?
My come to Jesus moment was back in 2018 when I got sent home from the Darien Gap. So I was down on the Darien Gap doing a humanitarian mission with a Red Horse unit and some Marine engineer unit. I got sick. I don't know if it was from like a typhoid jab that I got prior to going. Like I got really sick. Something was messed up with me. And that turned into, getting sent home early from that deployment humanitarian mission. And, I was down in the dumps, like darkness. And I really wanted out of this world, like completely out, wanted to escape. And so I had a brother who recognized how low I was, invited me out to um, a, a sober retreat out in Estes Park, Colorado. And so I went to that. And while I was in Estes Park, Colorado, I was having a real rough time, and I submitted my life. I submitted my life to Jesus Christ Almighty, and I just completely got to that lowest point in my life, and I gave it over. And from that point forward, that was literally my come to Jesus. And I was just like, I'll do anything, whatever you want me to do, help me. And, give me eyes to see and ears to hear. And every day, every single day, I always turn it over. And of course, I'm so incredibly imperfect, right?
We all
We
are.
all are, right? And so it's just that walk, that consistent walk and conscious turning it over to God. But that was my come to Jesus moment.
Well, I'm sure there's many, many, many people out there that are in your position right now, and they just want out. And so I'm sure you would say that in order to remedy that, and the way to fix that is by just giving your cares to the Lord. And I'm sure you would say that since you gave your life to Christ, that's when you became a much better man. And we can see here now how moral, ethical you are, and how brave and courageous you stood up for righteousness. And so I'm sure it's pretty powerful how Christ moves.
Yeah, it was an incredible walk. I don't drink alcohol. I quit back in 2012. I quit, a lot of substances like nicotine, alcohol, and things like that, which were also a destroying factor in my life. And but even without that, I was obviously having some serious hard times, and it wasn't a system that helped me. It wasn't, a pill that helped me. It was none of that. It was another man, a brother that, recognizes another brother having issues, but it was, ultimately it's Jesus Christ Almighty. And today, problem, and the reason why, in my opinion, the reason why we see such a high suicide rate is because these individuals find themselves at such a low point, and we have other individuals that don't know how to like empathize and humanize with that. Instead, they shuck them off to a medical system that really turns them into their treats them like a machine versus a man, right? And then gives them psychotropics, and those psychotropics ironically induce suicidal ideations, right? And so, and they're band-aids. Not there to solve the problem, and they make immense amount of money for the system. So we wonder why there's such a crisis with suicide, and that's one of the big reasons is there's no uh, it's not a humane medical system to treat man for his issues. Because if it was, it would, one, I would argue, largely be faith based, but it would be more holistic versus, shoving psychotropics down their throats and then sending them back on their way. And then, we wonder why they're no longer with us. Uh, and so yeah, that's a big one right there.
Yeah. So, for some of the youth who may be involved in some of the substances and alcohol and stuff, what would you say to them who are struggling with getting rid of that?
I would say find a local group in your area. I mean, there's these, AA groups that are completely anonymous that um I mean, I would say find a group like that. Find a faith-based group. Usually they're in churches too. And usually it is faith-based. And so I would say find a faith-based group or an anonymous group, because those anonymous groups, they don't everybody's dealing with the same issues. You're not alone. Is what I would first say, is like, you're not alone. You're not the only one dealing with these issues. And if you want to get sober, I'd say reach out to individuals in your community that are part of that sobriety community and that are trudging that road of sobriety. And there's multiple resources for that that's outside kind of the mainstream system. I'm not saying that there's not critical situations where that medical system will save a life, because of course it will and it can. I'm just saying that uh, oftentimes it throws band-aids and doesn't set the individual up for long-term success. Um, and then some of those band-aids can actually be more deadly than, you know, we just know this. So that's what I would say. You're not alone. And kind of, if you're truly interested and really, want to be walking away from substance abuse, whatever that may look like in your life, then you need to find some people in that area that are going through some of the similar things, because they are. And some of these individuals, I mean, I've met incredible people that have been sober, 40 years, and they're still in those communities helping these younger generation that are just getting off of some of these substances. And then if you're stuck on the mainstream medical systems like psychotropics, I mean, I think we need to make a call collectively as we the people to have detoxification focus on those psychotropics, because I I just think they're incredibly dangerous and not helpful at all.
Well, you can see it's even that is super prevalent. I mean, I think in California and San Francisco, they have like needles everywhere. Like, and they have, oh man, I forgot the name of the kid, but it's like if you overdose, it's something to,
Narcan.
yeah, Narcan. They have the like stations for that all throughout like the cities. And so it's like, do your drugs safely. And so it's like, that's a big thing that's being pushed. And so I think that also money.
It's money. It makes so much money.
And control, I would say.
Yeah, money and control. They don't actually want people getting sober, because if they did, they would be,
They'd be able to think.
right. They'd be able to think, and they'd be able to, they wouldn't put up with the crap that's going on. But the fact that is, they're all hopped up on whatever, and they could care less about what's actually going on. In my opinion.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think, yes, it's important to focus on actual substance drugs, but I think the number one drug that is really harming the youth, especially men, is the addiction to pornography.
Mm.
I think that is absolutely something that we're, as Christians, for pastors, for churches, we're way too quiet about it.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
it is silently killing our men, especially men of faith. It's a battle that's very hard to beat, and it's pretty much impossible alone. So, I mean, absolutely, I really do want to focus on the substance, but even what's on your phone screen
Oh yeah.
can
It's
ruin your mind.
Well, it's the
It's- yeah. Sorry. No, go ahead.
no, it's the double-edged sword. The phone. I mean, it can be used for good, but the devil has infiltrated that in unimaginable ways and used it to cause. I mean, the downfall of man. Really, it's really a shame to see that going on. So you're absolutely right. That is a massive crisis going right now, and it's destroying a lot of people, a lot of families, and it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable.
It's a castration of the masculine.
Mhm.
You know, it's completely castrating the man, whether they know it or not. They're castrating themselves when they do it. They participate in it. You're actually giving away your power as a man. And God created man and woman, right? There's biological differences there, and it's like the fact that largely the feminine has kind of taken over, and taken over, and we don't encourage masculinity. Like that, you don't see that in school. You know what I'm saying? You don't even see that in churches.
Mm-mm.
And you talked about the churches. Like, where were the churches during the whole pandemic? I mean, a lot of them closed down. I was just baffled, completely baffled, or masked up, or forced, um, were an advocate for the experimental injections. And I'm just like, I mean, but that goes to a deeper, type question as well. I mean, some of these churches,
Yeah, that gets really deep really fast.
yeah.
And can
A lot of people don't want to hear that.
Oh
truth,
man, that's a fact.
it goes on.
So, Mark, what does courage look like in this day and age when support is silent and there's no more spotlight?
I mean, that's exactly it. It's that's kind of exactly what it looks like. It's like courage is the fact that you're going to find yourself alone. Um, you're going to be going against the grain. You might not have allies in your corner. They might not see the things the way you see the things, but I would say the courage part of it is to keep going. To keep going. That is the courageous part, is to keep going when those things are against you and the odds are against you, as long as you've done the best you can to understand the situation and the information, and being open to additional information, because if you have to change course, you can change course, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're convicted in your beliefs, I mean, the courageous thing is to, when everybody else is going the other way, you just keep on trudging along, I would say.
Yeah, that's good. Well, as we start to wrap up here, our show is really going to be tailored to training men how to be men and how to be able to live clean, like think clearly and off of have discernment and be in alignment with the truth of God's word. And so for all those listening, what would you say about like, because I know you've taken a stand and it cost you. It cost you big. It turned out good, but it cost you. And so what would you say to those who are wanting to stand up for something but are afraid of the cost that it might bring?
I mean, that's where you got to put God first. It's faith over fear. That's the bottom line. If you're afraid of something, I mean, that just means you're trying to puppet master and control the situation. And at some point in time, you gotta have faith and give it over and do what you gotta do. Um, yeah, I mean, it's crazy because none of this. It's not going to be comfortable. It's just not. I mean, it's just not going to be comfortable. You're not going to be comfortable, but when you have that faith, you're able to navigate those situations and then be amazed on the other side when you actually get through it. You're like, wow, the only reason I was able to get through that was because my faith in God. Like, because I know what I would do if I acted on my own accord, and that's, I got to allow for the humanness aspect. It's like nobody's perfect. But at the same time, I think the empowerment of people the God-given discernment and having faith over fear, and just remembering that fear is nothing more than false evidence appearing real, and more likely you're being manipulated. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Mark Bashaw, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on the Centurion Show. Hopefully we can do this. We can do this again soon. But it's been awesome.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate all you.
Yes,
God
sir.
bless.
God bless you.